A national conversation on housing is difficult to have right now because there are two very different experiences happening across the country. Depending on where you live, rents or single-family home prices are higher than they've ever been, and they're increasing rapidly. And then there are other areas of the country where rents are actually decreasing, and there's a glut in single-family home new construction. I recently read an article in the Wall Street Journal that talked about how this is the highest level of glut of single-family homes in the United States since 2011. And I read another article that talked about certain apartment complexes in cities in Phoenix, in Denver, and in Charlotte, North Carolina, that are offering 1 or 2 month rent free to entice tenants to move in because there's an oversupply of apartments. Again, depending on where you live, there are two very different housing experiences. As a city planner who lives in New England, I'm very interested in how cities are reducing rents and reducing single-family home prices, because that's not the experience that is happening here. So I'm interested in better understanding why there's two completely different scenarios happening right now. So as I said, in some areas, rents are going down. The 10 cities where median rents are dropping are in Austin, Denver, Birmingham, Jacksonville, Phoenix, San Diego, Vegas, Houston, Miami, and San Antonio. And again, I'm reading articles about how this is the biggest glut of housing inventory in about 15 years, which sounds crazy. Meanwhile, the most expensive markets are in the older coastal cities. So these are cities like New York, Newark, Boston, San Francisco, Seattle, LA. These are experiencing the highest home prices that these cities have ever seen, and rents are increasing. The rate of rents aren't increasing as high as other cities, but it's because they're already the most expensive cities to live in, and they are increasing. And then there used to be value in the Midwest, right? Again, my New England bias is showing, but you would always think about Midwestern cities having a lower cost of living. And that's becoming no longer the case, because you have cities like Cleveland who have had a 7% increase in their annual rent, in their average rent. You have cities like Fort Wayne, Indiana, Milwaukee, Toledo, and Detroit with average rental increases about 6%. Why is rent going down in some cities and increasing in others? And I think this can be explained in two different ways. One is really just human behavior, and the second is how human behavior relates to supply and demand in these markets. It seems like the way the trends have been going since especially 2019 is that there are people like to live in warmer cities and places with a warmer climate. So the better the weather, these cities are really seeing an increasing in housing production and a reduction in rents. Now, why is this happening? Post-COVID, as more people have been working from home, it seems like people are free to live wherever they want and work for their company remotely. So they are choosing these cities, and you can see the trends since 2019 show the same states are seeing a net increase in migration, and then the same states are seeing the same decrease in population. States like Arizona, Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida having the most net migration. So people are moving to these states the most: Arizona, Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina, and Florida. The states where people are leaving the most net domestic migration out of the state is California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. So they're losing the most people. And again, these trends have been consistent since 2019. At first glance, I would think, all right, if you're seeing states that have a net positive migration, you're seeing an increased demand for houses and apartments there. So you would think the housing prices would increase. And they probably did at that time. But now those are the same states that it looks like the housing market has corrected itself. So it was a signal to developers to build more apartment units, build more single-family homes because of the increase in people moving there. Now it looks like they built a little bit in excess because you're seeing rental prices drop. Again, there was a Wall Street Journal article recently talking about how this is really particular to a lot of the luxury apartments, where Phoenix, Arizona, a lot of people from California were moving to Phoenix, Arizona, and the real estate developers want to keep those rents higher. So instead of dropping the monthly rate, they are offering a 1 month free or 2 months free as a way to entice people to live in the apartment complex. I mean, Phoenix is unique because Phoenix was adding over 50,000 apartments per year almost since 2019. So really, it looks like as their population grew, the housing demand kind of met the match there. We've seen the same thing in Austin, Texas, as well as another city where rents are actually decreasing because so many new units were constructed. Now, when it comes to buying single-family homes, that is mostly the new housing production is happening in the South, which makes sense, right? Because that's where the land is. In the southern states and in the Southwest, that is experiencing the most single-family home construction compared to these older, more established New England cities that have been around forever and have really been built out. A lot of their construction is infill development. So the states adding the most single-family homes in 2025 were Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Arizona, Georgia, and South Carolina. To put this in perspective, Massachusetts was only adding about 12,000 new homes per year in 2020, 2021, and 2022. So each of those years, they're only adding 12,000. Meanwhile, states like North Carolina were adding 94,000 new housing units per year. Florida, 181,000, and Texas, 226,000. Now, obviously, Florida and Texas are much bigger states with much more land than Massachusetts, so that makes sense. But it shows how these New England cities aren't adding as many housing units, and they are seeing a reduction in population. These cities are home to so many Fortune 500 companies in the East Coast, some of the most prestigious colleges and universities. So they have that built-in demand in the coastal cities that are already so expensive. They do have that consistent pipeline of high-wage earners that keep trying to buy these single-family homes and apartments, which is continuously driving rents and prices up if there isn't new home production. It'll be interesting to see the domestic population trends over the next few years, because if you think about it, post-COVID, now that it's already a thing where people can work from home, is that already done with? Has everybody who's decided to, hey, I'm going to work from home, have all the companies that have transitioned to fully remote work already done that? And now people have kind of shaken out and decided to live where they want to live because they're no longer tied to a commute to the office, right? If you can work and obtain New York City wages, San Francisco wages, Boston wages, but live wherever you want in the country because you're working 100% remote, have those people already moved? And will we continue to see these net migration trends of people leaving states like California, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts? And will we continue to see the population increase in Florida, Texas, Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia? That will be an interesting trend to watch because they have been building so much. So have they built too much? These trends also speak to the question of whether we'll see another countrywide housing crisis like we did in 2008, because it seems like we have a split system right now where if there is a housing crisis in these states that have built so many new single-family homes and built so many apartments, it's really not having an impact on New York or Boston or San Francisco prices. Now, that 2008 financial crisis took out, it wasn't just a housing crisis, it was a housing crisis that took out the whole financial industry. So are those same mechanisms at play right now? It's hard to tell. No one can really predict. So it seems like they're not as connected as they were in 2008. They seem to be two separate markets doing two totally separate things, one going up, one going down. At the individual level, we're also seeing almost a two-tiered system as well. Either you're in the home buyers club or you're outside of it. Either you already own property and have been experiencing the increase in property values in these coastal cities, the larger cities where it's so expensive, or you're on the outside. You're on the outside paying extremely high rents, unable to save up for a down payment, unable to increase your income enough to catch the rising prices of homes, and the high interest rates aren't helping. So those monthly payments are so exorbitant that it's actually cheaper to pay extremely high rent for your apartment. But again, not getting ahead to be able to buy the single family home. So it's really a two-tiered system in the larger cities, in those metro areas, whereas it doesn't seem like that's the case in the southern states or in the Southwest. So what I'll be watching for is to see if housing production, if single-family homes and apartment production continues to happen in those states that I mentioned, in cities where prices are decreasing. Is production going to slow down? And how are the prices going to react down there? How are those markets going to be in the next few years? And also, in the most expensive cities, if they are going to increase their production to meet the current demand. If those cities and states that are already so built out, if they're able to develop with their infill development new units to reduce those prices, because it is so expensive in these larger cities, to see if they're able to meet, if they're able to increase their supply. Because right now, again, it's two different worlds. You either can't afford it in these larger cities, or you're getting your rent reduced in some of these cities where there's excess supply. The data seems pretty clear that homeownership is out of reach for so many people. So it'll be interesting to see if population flows out of those places where it's just totally inexpensive into the South. If you're interested in cities, economics, or planning, subscribe for more videos.